Welcome to the Home Business Podcast with Richard Captain Henderson, publisher of Home Business Magazine, and Sherilyn Colleen, managing editor. This how-to show helps you successfully operate your home-based business.
Greetings and welcome to the Home Business Podcast. I'm Richard Captain Henderson, your skipper at Home Business TV. Let's secure for sea and get underway. It's a startup nation out there, and we cannot learn enough from all the different startup stories that are out there. I've learned through my many interviews that startups in a particular industry can share unique lessons and business building advice for any entrepreneur. With that in mind, today we are joined by George Cram and Patrick Frank, co-founders of the healthcare startup Patient Partner, and both of them Forbes 30 Under 30 entrepreneurs. George Cram and Patrick Frank like to call out lessons they've learned that they could not have learned in any business school. Competing in an industry filled with competition provides numerous lessons learned that can help you. Furthermore, are there any startup secrets that George Cram and Patrick Frank could only learn on the job? Let's find out. Greetings, George Cram and Patrick Frank. Thanks for joining us today. Say hello to our audience. How you doing?
Doing good, Richard. Hey, what an introduction, man. I don't think I've ever gotten such a nice introduction.
I stayed up all night working on that.
Well,
we had to do
off.
two takes. It was so great that we had to do it twice. So
that's right.
All right, I'm a little by this end of the week, I'm getting a little loopy. So you're all calling from beautiful La Jolla.
That's it. San Diego, California, right in the best part of it, down La Jolla.
Oh yeah, boy, used to be out there with the Navy and lived in Huntington Beach for a while, and yeah, that's a great part of the world. Plus, it seems we always talk about when you're near the water. Do you agree that the ocean is inspirational?
100%, and I think majority of our employees would feel the same way. I mean, outside we literally have desks and chairs, so people could sit out there and work.
Chair right there. That's actually a chair in the middle of it.
Wait! You told me that was a virtual backdrop. No.
No, this is legit. That's real deal.
All right, no, I believe you. Yeah, that's just a great part of the world to be in. Plus, I imagine you got a lot of talent out there to tap into, and
a lot of hospitals and a lot of healthcare out here in San Diego, without a doubt.
That's right, particularly in La Jolla. I remember that, so
definitely.
Well, George, Patrick, thanks for joining us today. How did you find yourself in the world of a healthcare industry startup?
Yeah, so my background actually comes from healthcare. So I pretty much started my career actually as a medical device rep. And what most people don't know is, like, as a device rep, it's actually a pretty cool job. I mean, you work in the operating room, you're helping out surgeons and physicians, making sure products are being implanted correctly, adding advice into the cases. And what it came down to is I loved that. I love that job and I love that career. But where I saw opportunity was helping patients understand and help navigate that surgical process. And there was so much information that I knew just from working in the industry that I felt patients really had no idea about. And I really wanted to help, bridge that gap, and teamed up with Patrick. Patrick has his own background primarily in technology. And honestly, it was like a beautiful marriage of both of our backgrounds starting, Patient Partner.
So you guys kind of complement each other then. One has one skill and one comes in with another, and it's been a good partnership.
Yeah, well, I think it's really interesting is, like, healthcare is like what we quote as, a legacy industry, right? It's one of those industries that's lagged behind everything else in order to really, like, change for the betterment of, the consumer through technology. Mm-hmm. And that's where I've spent my career, is across all these other consumer technology landscapes. I mean, prop tech, fintech, law tech, if that's even a thing, even oil and gas, right? And so all of these other industries are adopting technology, and healthcare, which is the largest part of our GDP. Right. I mean, you think about how slow it moves. It's, we're here to try and speed it up. And we both bring the, different backgrounds of, one, the actual healthcare side, but two, taking what we've seen work in other industries and applying it here.
Yeah, well, you hit the nail on. I mean, you're in a big industry that always brings a lot of opportunity, plus the emphasis on technology. I think all startups have to revolve around technology somehow, but we got to get some dirt here. There's got to be some friction in a partnership. When does it ever get anything that gets aggravating? You got to do some team building stuff to keep the partnership good.
Well, I think what's funny is, I mean, we've known each other since we were in second grade. I mean, we grew up in the same neighborhood together. I mean, 2 houses down. We've been suspended from school together.
Richard,
Oh, there we go.
I've seen Patrick at his worst.
Yeah.
100%.
I'll be honest with you.
He lived in my house for a while.
Yeah.
Drank the same beer from your neighbor's garage. I mean, you bonded on things.
Well, it makes all these other things so much easier. I mean, the problems that you encounter are not necessarily our problems. It's the problems of, it's business problems, right?
Mhm.
How can you work together to tackle something that, candidly, it doesn't matter whether our skills do complement each other in health
Yeah.
or in consumer technology. We're coming across problems we never thought we'd ever encounter in our lives. And so we have to utilize us, our team, everybody else in order to meet those. I mean, that's where it lies. It's not in anything else.
I've come across a lot of partnerships and with a couple of guys usually that they've known each other, way back. And, I think maybe just knowing, somebody out there, you can work with, and you've had, maybe you played on the same football team together, whatever, there's a good background there. But let's dig into a little bit more. What were some of the bigger challenges you faced in your startup journey, particularly in its earliest stages?
Yeah. Well, when we started this business together, we had a tough time trying to figure out exactly the business model. We ended up pivoting about 6 times, trying to figure out where exactly does our technology and our solution fit within the market. And what it came down to is we looked at it from like a very unbiased and egotistical lens, where it's like, we look at something, we look at the data showing us, we're looking at what patients are saying about it, we're looking about what the industry is saying about this, and we're making adjustments. And I think that's one of the greatest characteristics that Pat and I both have, is that we're not completely married to something that we started, and we want to build something and adjust to honestly the market to make sure that there's a home for this. And being able to have that sort of flexibility and the mindset of like, I can change and adapt, is what I think is incredibly valuable, and something that every entrepreneur and every founder needs to have.
So you kind of come in with it with a tested out mentality, where you're not married to a way of doing business, but you want to put it out there, make some initial distance, get some feedback from your clients, and then make adjustment.
Well, I think that the biggest thing to note here is like, a lot of people start a company and they're like, this is the one thing I'm doing, right? And this is it. But the reality is like, you have to start a business with an idea. Like, for our ideas, like, we wanted to impact healthcare, and we wanted to make it simpler. We wanted to make it better for patients and easier for the industry, right? And in doing that, there's so many possibilities. There's thousands, hundreds of thousands of possibilities of how to do it. And what we did was we continued building until we found something that married both ends of it, right? And something that truly did accomplish that. Whereas like just saying that I'm going to do one thing, I mean, you never know what you're going to find out along the way. And half of being an entrepreneur is not knowing what you don't know. Right. And not having an ego when you find those things out.
At the end of the day,
I got to stop that. That's great. That was profound. Half of being an entrepreneur is
not knowing what you don't know.
That's great. You got to trademark that. That really sums up the whole entrepreneurial world in one statement.
Patrick's full of one-liners.
Yeah,
you hang around long enough.
Yeah, I'll just start throwing out one-liners.
There we go.
Half of them, you kind of sit there and you go like, wait, does this even make sense?
100%. Philosophy, man.
Well, so, you're hitting on something that is, it's hard to put into words, but it's a mentality. I guess an entrepreneur's mentality. These things you're talking about. That doesn't matter what industry you're in, but it's like, I guess maybe even programming the way your mind looks at things, where with the flexibility and getting feedback and making adjustments. A lot of industries don't teach you to do that. I mean, I had to learn it. I was in engineering, trained to do that, and there's a systematic approach to that. But entrepreneur, what the things you're talking about, you've got to be able to adjust. What was that word you used? Pivot.
Yeah. You have to be able to adjust. I mean, the world is constantly moving. I mean, you have to be able to move along with it, right? And you have to be able to adjust as to what the market has an appetite for.
Let's look a little bit on that pivot. Initial startup success does require having a vision and communicating it to key people. Do you have any advice on this vision thing entrepreneurs sometimes talk about?
Yeah, I mean, from a vision standpoint, this is something that honestly we've been really focused on here at the company is making sure the entire team understands where we're going. And I think with the vision, obviously it's futuristic, right? You're looking to go, this is where the company needs to be. This is where I know the company is going to be going, and making sure that everybody that you bring on understands that pathway, and being very clear with why we're doing things. And when we go and launch this new feature, although this feature right now doesn't seem very, needle moving, it will be needle moving once we get to the next stage. And so it's being able to articulate that to the team and make everybody understand on the road path that we're going down.
And having them articulate it back to you. I mean, the part of it is that our job is to be able to see just enough into the future beyond what everybody else can see, and be able to translate that to people to have it make sense, because that world doesn't exist yet. Right. And so we have to paint that picture every single day for our team, and making sure that they believe it exists, and it exists here within the walls of our office. And that's what we're making.
I like what you just put out a good nugget there that we had the military. We call it the communication feedback loop.
Yep.
Or you can put the communication out there, but you got to have some kind of a feedback loop, whether it be with customers or the people working with you, that they understand what you're saying.
Absolutely. I mean, the last company I was at, that was something, and even here we brought it along, and that's exactly what we do every single day. Is like we build. I mean, we mentioned how we pivot, is that we build through the feedback we have, right? Like we need to listen to the people we are building for in order to build better. And it's not just our customers, it's also our team, it's also each other, right? If all that just falls on deaf ears, we're going to end up, isolated. So it's being open to all of that and incorporating it to what we're doing.
Yeah, I like this discussion because you're not really, this isn't really specific to healthcare. The competencies you're going over here would apply to a business startup in any industry.
Healthcare is unique, right? I mean,
yeah, you have something unique with the medical field.
Yeah, but it's so funny. It's like, I think a lot of our problems or not a lot of our problems. I think a lot of the business problems we have has nothing to do with healthcare. It's more on the lines of like, everything from just starting a business, whether it's hiring, whether it's, from an operations standpoint, making sure things are organized, whether it's from a capitalization standpoint, we have to, the things that we tackle, obviously the healthcare side of things, you have to make sure a lot of boxes are checked, but there's also just like the other business side of things that we, struggle and excel in, just like any other business.
I will definitely say though, healthcare is by far more complex than any other industry. There's more regulation, there's more parties involved, it's more emotional, and there's more, there's more seriousness to it than anything else, right? Like you're going through a life-changing procedure. That's bigger than if you're buying a house, right? It's bigger than opening a new bank account or an investment you're making, right? So it's by far the most impactful portion of someone's life. So it has to, there's complexities that come along.
Yeah, there's nothing like a medical diagnosis to suddenly get your attention and kind of put everything into perspective. But I like what you said, that the problems that come up that'll grind your startup to a halt usually have nothing to do with healthcare technology. They're something that could be within any business.
They're business problems.
It's a business problem. Yeah.
Let's get back a little bit into those business problems with, you like to talk about business school. Can you go over a few things that you learned on the job that you could never learn in a B school?
I'm very heavily opinionated on this. I have a ton of friends who went to business school, and I love all of them.
And they probably paid a fortune to do it.
They paid a fortune for it. They were, there's an immense amount of debt, and a textbook only has so many pages, right? And you probably read only that many of them. The reality is like we talk about this all the time, is that you have to go in and do it. Right? You can't learn inside the walls of a classroom the reality that lies outside of it, right? Like we wouldn't know how to build a business if we didn't just go and do it, right? And you have to take action. And the problem is that it's like, and this is why I think about just the way, I'm not going to go in the educational system side of it, but it's this idea that action trumps ideation every time, right? If you're going to take action, you fail forward, right? You're going to learn and move forward faster. But you're going to be moving 10 times faster than someone who's just standing still and thinking, right? Because theory does not solve problems, right? Action solves problems.
You got to go down the road. And
Yeah,
even
100%.
if you're driving off the road, you gotta, so you gotta figure out what you need to do to get back on the road. But you just sit there and stare at the road and the map, it's just not going to go, and you're never going to figure it
Stare the
out.
fastest way to get there, but I'm already,
Yeah,
10 miles ahead of you.
There's like a funny like I remember there's a funny presentation I was listening to, but it was revolving around the same idea where it's like, why is it that some of the most successful people in the world are not necessarily the brightest people in the world?
Mhm.
And what it came down to is that the highly intelligent people always look at what can go wrong, and that's what gets them not to
Well, they think about things too much. That's my engineering kid.
But what it came down to is the ending of the talk was like the people who are successful are the people who are bold, who go, okay, you're right. There are 10 traps out there, but I'm still going to go out there. And it just kind of ping ponging off Pat is like the same thing kind of applies here. It's like, you can go to business school and you can go and read all the books. You can go and know all the strategies and all that stuff. But when shit hits the fan, like you're not going to go back to.
You're not going to go to your textbook.
Right.
Yeah, you're really not.
No.
Okay, well, but for one nugget, I will say though, is having a good legal team is definitely underrepresented. You really need to find a good legal team that understands you, can work at your pace, and is like the perfect size for your business.
Look, we are masters of outsourcing, right? And now we're becoming masters of insourcing as we build our team. But I will tell you this, is that two things you have to know enough about, right? But outsource and choose very wisely about who you do it with is your legal and your accounting team.
Right.
Make sure that you choose great partners there. It will change your life and your trajectory of your company.
Yeah, you can't say that enough, because that's something that's just going to be a cost. But so a lot of entrepreneurs try to avoid that. Say, well, I'll talk to a lawyer and get a good accountant when I need it. But you've got to have those people in place at the start. Particularly, I think some of the accounting decisions you'll make at the beginning, such as whether you're cash based or accrual, that can, you can't change things like that down the road.
Always go accrual. I'll tell you that right now.
I just got to circle back on a story I was thinking of when you're talking about you just got to move down the road. So I got into, been doing some flight training for a private pilot license. And, I watched YouTube video after YouTube video. I say, I got this. I got up there and I didn't have it. You can do all the preparation in the world, but you've got to take the stick and the rudder in your hand. And, and if you crash, it's not going to be on a simulator. You've just, you've got to move down the road.
You do.
Yeah, that's a pretty serious example there. That's life or death.
I got to do something stupid with my life. So I'm one of those like dumb entrepreneurs you're talking about, the C students. So, let's talk a little bit about your industry. You are in a competitive industry. How do you size up the competition and then look for competitive advantages?
Yeah, I mean, what it came down to is like we looked at like what is the current struggles within the patient experience, and we looked at and candidly we experienced them ourselves. Like Pat's actually experiencing it right now. Like going and actually navigating the healthcare markets and the healthcare journey is so convoluted, so confusing. Everybody's taking a different pathway. When you say, hey, you have to go see a doctor, what do you do? And then like everybody has a different answer. And so we look at it from like a competitive standpoint. We go, man, that's a lot of competitors out there. But the beautiful thing is you look at it from a different lens and you go, wait, so there's nobody else doing one thing at all that can be like a one-stop shop for everybody. And that's where
platforms are nothing more than taking things that exist in the world and putting them all in one place. That's it.
That's
all they are.
Looking at it.
And if there is something as broken, as segmented and splintered as the healthcare journey, right? It needs to be centralized. And, it's funny, people ask us like, whoa, what do you do? And the very first thing I say is I go, hey, if you got diagnosed, or, you had to go get your knee replaced or ACL, reconstructed, what do you do? I don't even tell them. I start there. And then all of a sudden they go down some journey, and every single person I've asked, I've never heard the same answer, not once. And that's what George is talking about. It's like our competition is the current behavior of consumers.
Yeah, people think about somebody they know that's had the procedure and go, hey, you got your knee replaced a couple of years ago. What do I do? And it shouldn't work that way.
But here's the thing is that like you mentioned that, but it's like that's the world we're creating, is that like that's part of the journey. And what Patient Partner does is like we bring together every component of that journey, and we allow people to connect on a relatable experience. Because talking to your friends, your family, your neighbors, like that's part of the journey. It's what people are doing, bringing that to a platform.
Well, I love your example about that, but it's funny, probably 15 years ago, you did the same thing about a restaurant.
Yep.
You would go in the office and talk to, hey, what's the restaurant should I go? I'm going out to dinner, taking the wife out this weekend. Where should I go?
Oh,
Now you don't do that. What do? You go to Yelp.
you go to
And you go,
reviews.
And like, it's such a similar concept. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, you still go and ask your friends about where you're going, but having that at your fingertips is so valuable. And you immediately understand what's good, what's not, where should I go, what is personal to me, what I like Italian, I don't like seafood.
I think it's like that is, 10 years ago, right? 15 years ago, you could not look up the price of a home online. 25 years ago, you couldn't book your own travel, right? Like,
I see something good in the industry you're in here is that, there's a lot of divergent opinions and a lot of complexity. So maybe it's good to go to a platform where you can see a lot of different feedback on a lot of different areas, and then tie that in with the medical advice.
I think one of the biggest things, though, that's so critical that happens in the medical side of things, because it is so much more serious than just choosing a restaurant, is making sure that you cut through the noise and you understand what information is actually important or relevant to you. And that's where like all of our technology lies, and what we've built is that we allow patients, potential patients, see who is the most relatable to them, so that they can cut through the noise and understand, hey, this is like what my future self is going to be like. I should probably pay attention to this information.
Well, you see how dysfunctional it could get just with COVID today.
Sure.
And all the different advice and, 100 million people joining in, and, you can see how something that should be relatively simple can really get complicated when you throw in all the different opinions. So I guess it'd be a good thing to kind of clear it up a little bit. But I like to get this when we talk to people that are in competitive industries. Do you get along pretty well with your competitors, or keep out there and network within with competitors within the industry? I bet that might get a little interesting.
I honestly do. I call all of them, and I think they're somewhat surprised that I'm reaching out. And Pat has a different.
What does he want? What's he fishing for?
When did you talk to? Oh, I thought you were talking like, because reality is like our competitors are the bigger institute, like you go to Google when you have a healthcare, you go to a Facebook group, you go to these things like. But I say you don't know Mark Zuckerberg or Sergey Brin. I mean, you're calling them, and I don't know about it. Like, I don't know. But no, you always have to welcome competition. You can learn more from competition than you can from being defensive around them, right? Like it's that simple. And in some cases, you never know. Maybe there's a world where you can work together, and then all of a sudden they're not competition, right?
It's like there's some key person working for another company, and pretty soon they're working for you. Or you say a lot of business growth opportunities come through merging and forming joint ventures and partnerships. You've got to have good relationships with the competitors to do that.
Yep.
Well, exactly. After you do get successfully launched, you've got to move quickly to capitalize on growth potential. So, healthcare, there's a lot of growth there. It's endemic within the healthcare industry. Any final advice on achieving smart startup growth?
Oh man, this is such a good question. So, Pat and I pretty much our whole lives have gone about finding and growing in very untraditional manners, and we still stick to that today. Whether it's trying to find a new customer, whether that's trying to find more patients, Pat and I take, there's companies out there that go, hey, we're just going to feed the Facebook and the Instagram ads and try to, accrue users that way. Pat and I have a completely different mentality and approach to that. And it's gotten us to everything from, hey, we're going to buy a big beach ball and take it to the Petco Park baseball game. There's a doctor we want to work with. How about this? We'll go send him the In-N-Out truck and have him arrive at his office. Things like that, where it's just like completely, where like it's show stopping. When somebody comes out and they're like, wait, who sent this?
You got to stand out.
Yes. I think in a world where like marketing has simply become who is the best digital marketing, who can win the best bid ask for an ad online, it's like the world is a very big place, and people are still
always have more money than you.
Exactly. And the
You
fact
got to
is,
be
like,
innovative.
but people are still real. like they say, oh, you know, people digest information so much better online and through ads. It's like, right. But they digest the world a lot better if it's right in front of their face. Like you're going to digest an In-N-Out burger if the In-N-Out truck is in front of you, and you're going to be wondering, how did this truck end up
What
in
a
front
good
of
pun.
you? Yeah, I had pun to that. I'm gonna
Well,
trademark-
I mean, you know, it just, you know, the digital marketing is just, it's saturated. You know, how do you stand out in a cell phone world? I guess, so you've got to be there, but then like some of the term I use a little is tactile, you know, the word tactile,
Yeah.
you've got to have some way to touch
Nimble
things to
tactile.
make an impression.
I love that.
So,
That's
well,
it.
hey, George Cram, Patrick Frank, this has been a great discussions on lessons we can learn in your startup journey. Do you have any final points you'd like to share?
If you have an idea, go for it. Don't just sit on it. Don't just think about it. Take action and go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I get this question a lot from like, you know, whether it's a college graduate or something like that. And it's, you know, hey, how do I begin my entrepreneurial career or whatever it is? And kind of just feeding off Pat, I always tell them like, just start something. I don't care if you're selling socks or if you launch something on Amazon, you're going to learn more about just starting anything than you will by reading books and you will by listening to others and stuff like that. So if you just want to start your entrepreneurial career, just go and do it. I don't care if it's selling lemonade on the corner. Like you're going to learn so much about that, and so much about that experience can be translated into your next idea and your next business.
Well, we always like to end every podcast with what do you need to do? What's an action step? So if you haven't gotten started, start selling some lemonade the next day, or take a step in joining the entrepreneurial world. Well, great advice, George Cram, Patrick Frank. Thank you for being with us today on the Home Business Podcast. To learn more about George Cram and Patrick Frank and their company, visit patientpartner.com or our podcast website for more information on guests. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Home Business Podcast. Share your feedback with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and at our website, homebusinessmag.com. Visit the website for information on advertising. Subscribe to the newsletter. Read the Home-Based Business Startup Guide. For more information, visit homebusinessmag.com or homebusinessexpo.com. I'm Richard Captain Henderson saying, anchors away. We'll talk to you soon. Until then, make it a great home-based biz day.
Love that.